So let's begin with the story, which is applicable for the next 1 or 2 weeks based on the planetary positions. Mars is one of the characters, and Mars will play the role of an artisan here. And Mercury obviously plays one of the characters because Mercury is basically retrograde, and he is the dispositor of Mars as Mars is entering Virgo. And Venus is also just entered Gemini, but she doesn't know how much trouble she's already in. She seems to be enjoying, but there is a little bit of challenge that Venus is going to face. And that will be one from Mars, and another is from the reality check that we all have, which is Saturn. And finally, there will be a little bit of hope because of the moon as it starts gaining light. So these are the five characters here, and Mars is in Virgo, and Mars is an artisan, kind of working very meticulously and also joyfully because Mars represents desire. So imagine Mars as a craftsman in Virgo, and he kind of wakes up early, very, very determined to create something flawless because Virgo is all about precision and flawless. And Mars in Virgo, as a craftsman, wants to create something flawless, every line straight, every corner polished. So his mantra is, if I'm going to do this, it must be perfect. I mean, absolutely perfect, no deviations. So there is an urgency in him because Mars is also speed. Mars wants that kind of urgency. So he desires to run fast. He wants to move fast and check things off the list. But as he sets out, Saturn in Pisces steps in like an elder teacher. So Saturn quietly says, wait, you're rushing. You're missing something very important. And Mars, as it is, doesn't really want to hear it, and he's frustrated by the slowdown. He wants results, he doesn't want any delays, but Saturn insists that he doesn't pause and review the mistakes. And there are chances for mistakes to multiply later. So the takeaway is that this tension reflects what we all are feeling and the drive to fix and move ahead, but life keeps throwing something like pauses or some kind of a hurdle or emotional situation or an emotional fog that kind of stops us from doing something. And then Mercury enters the scene. Mercury shows up from Cancer, and he's also moving retrograde, holding old letters and lot of memories. um, and and he's also walking backward, remember, and he's carrying a lot of emotions, memories, and some of the conversations he didn't finish. And remember, Mercury is dispositing Mars because Mars is in Virgo, and Mercury looks at Mars and says, wait, we cannot move forward until we actually revisit the past. Let's fix what's broken. And Mars is infuriated. So he doesn't like the Cancer style because it feels too emotional and it feels too personal. And Mars doesn't like those things. He just wants to kind of move forward to achieve his desire. But deep down, Mars knows that review is necessary. As an artisan, Mars understands that review is necessary. So, and he says, so Mercury reminds that if we can be brave enough to reopen these old conversations or unfinished tasks, this combination can lead to healing and also precision for the rest of the year. So Mars, you need to slow down, is what Mercury says. And takeaway is that Mercury is in Cancer and Mars, Saturn is in Pisces, so there is a trine between Saturn and Mercury basically also not just Saturn Mars opposition, but Mercury also transmits some kinds of rays, and therefore Mercury, as it is already retrograde, also passes on the information that there is this need to constantly slow down and review and reassess and reorganize. So retrogrades basically are invitation to reflect, not reasons to panic. So what are the repairs do you need to make, whether it is emotional or whether it is practical, whatever it is, just go ahead and do. That's what Mars, Mercury, and Saturn are together saying here. So let's go to Venus. Venus is in Gemini. Uh, a little girl happily chatting, but is basically caught between Mars and Saturn. So there is a square between Mars and Venus squares both Mars and Saturn from Gemini. Venus arrives in Gemini being very playful and also curious, and everything that Venus in Gemini indicates wanting to connect through words and light-hearted interactions and whatnot. She thrives on variety and fun conversations, but she enters this scene. She realizes she's caught in the middle of Mars and Saturn's tug of war. Basically, Venus tries to mediate. Come on, can't we just talk this through? Mars obviously is impatient, and Saturn is stubborn and stern. Words seem to be flying here and there. Misunderstandings happen easily because Mercury is also retrograde. And what was meant as a joke may come off as criticism. Someone might feel judged or unappreciated, and Venus doesn't like this challenging, ugly situations. And again, the takeaway is that the square impacts relationships of all kinds. It doesn't have to kind of do anything with you. It might be something external, or it might be something that kind of underlines the dynamics of the relationship, which is going through some form of a change or challenge, whatever it is. So it tests how we communicate under stress. Are we speaking to connect or to correct? You need to kind of answer yourself and then move forward. So now there is this scene 4, which is this reality check. There is a kind of a Mars, Venus, Saturn. Mars is passion and Venus is love, and Saturn is reality. There is this nice relationship. I don't know if it is nice, but still it is a relationship. And now the story intensifies. Mm, So, as I mentioned, Mars represents passion and drive, Venus represents love and connection, Saturn represents reality and boundaries. Venus is kind of squeezed between them, in the angle. So, basically, torn between desire and practical limitations. Picture a relationship where there is a real passion, a deep pull to be together, but circumstances, Saturn, keep putting up roadblocks or hurdles. Or maybe you want to pursue a project or dream, Mars and Venus united, but real life duties, time constraints, or sometimes self doubts, as Saturn represents, keep interfering. And Saturn is always, prolonging this patience that we need, and build something lasting instead of rushing. And that's what Saturn says. But Mars wants to rush, confront reality honestly rather than avoiding it. So there is this reality check that Saturn is posing. He's showing a mirror, and the artisan needs to look at that mirror instead of avoiding it. So this is where calm and honest conversation can transform the dynamic. So in case you are going through a relationship issue, there is a lot of storm going on. Obviously, in relationship, emotions are involved, sometimes ego as well. So all that is needed is to not break the bonds, but to strengthen through patience, clarity, and honest conversation, through constructive communication. Scene 5, the moon brings hope. So let's consider light as hope. So moon moving towards the first quarter is obviously gaining light. Amid this tension, the moon quietly grows. It is heading towards its first quarter phase, gathering light and momentum. The moon whispers, there is energy here. Use it. Release what weighs you down. This chapter isn't forever. And this is the emotional turning point, basically a reminder that even if things feel heavy now, we are approaching renewal with the new moon in Leo by late August. So wait for that new moon, and until then, just approach the renewal process. The drama of Mars, Venus, and Saturn won't last. It just will fade off. So takeaways: the moon reminds us to focus on emotional progress, not perfection. So it is time for us to let go of baggage so new opportunities can emerge. And final message is that planets are moving apart and skies will calm down. And once the sky calms down, Mars obviously learns patience because Saturn is forcing Mars to be patient. The artisan is finally learning what patience is. And with Venus in Gemini caught in between tug of war, there is this deeper sense of having to communicate with honesty and some form of empathy in communication. And Mercury helps us fix what we missed, and that is the role Mercury is playing here, constantly pushing us to fix as it is retrograde. And Saturn reminds us of real limits, but also lasting rewards, right? So the delay of Saturn is not a denial, and the Moon carries forward into a new phase where we are going to take a new leap and leave our baggages behind. So for the next 1 or 2 weeks, we are going to live through this story. If we resist rushing, uh, I think it's good that we can stay open to honest dialogue and trust the timing, and sometimes have the dialogue amongst yourself or within yourself. Uh, Amongst yourself in case of relationships, and within yourselves is if you don't have anyone to talk. And these tensions transform into growth, and things might slowly change